Hello, Heidi Souffriau. Got it?
Almost. You got it almost, but I applaud you. It's not an easy one.
I tried.
Souffriau.
Thank you. So when I was doing some research on your website, it said that you are a guide that helps people remember their soul's journeys and their purpose, which I thought was just so beautiful and a great way to put it. And you do that by using soul astrology, yoga science, and white magic. White magic I definitely want to touch on because that just sounds super interesting. But I thought the best place for us to start this conversation, considering eclipse season, and I'm pretty sure eclipse is today also,
Yes.
to my knowledge anyway. So I know that you know a lot about the transits, and that for me and probably some of my listeners is something that is a little foreign. So can you kind of just break down, first of all, eclipse season, like what does that mean spiritually and energetically for people? And then maybe go into the transits and explain what that means on a basic level for us. Because I don't know, I personally am a little lost on that, but I would love to hear about it.
First of all, I think it's super interesting that we tried to meet earlier this week and then it happened today on the exact day of the eclipse. So yeah, it might be something to really talk about. So eclipses, what's beautiful about it is that it's a season, right? And the season actually lasts a year and a half, that we are eclipsing out of one expression of a sign and eclipsing into a higher expression, hopefully, of the sign, which is our true north, which is our direction where we're going as a collective. So everybody feels kind of a letting go of the same things and moving into a new area. But then in regards to your birth chart, it's individually expressed in different areas of our lives. And over the last year and a half, we have been eclipsing out of Scorpio into the North Node of Taurus. And that's a quite interesting place because Scorpio is very much about the battlefield of our humanity. And all these, like the ego battles, you know, like where we have to take action in life. And it's very embodied, Scorpio. It's very much here. And it is all these wars within that we sometimes externalize and our addictions. And of course, like if we eclipse out of a constellation, that means that we're gonna want to embody the higher qualities of that constellation. So we can see a lot of things about Scorpio. It's intense, it's powerful, it's truth serum, it's all of these things, but it's also a healer, a psychologist, somebody who, like a Scorpio, in essence, in the soul of the constellation, it's somebody who can really see you and be mentally intimate with you, and through listening and really willingness to understand the other on a deep level, actually automatically heal. So that is a really beautiful contribution of this eclipse season. And as we move towards the end of it, we also come to embody the qualities, the higher qualities of Taurus, which is basically our connection to our true nature. So Taurus is about the material plane. It's about the Buddha, like sitting still in meditation. It's a yin sign. It's also about our possessions. It's about our money that we earn in the world. And on a soul level, it has to do with the money we earn in the world, but based on our spiritual values. So what's interesting with Taurus as well is that one of the biggest transits that we are going to have over the next month is Jupiter moving into Taurus. And that is going to be really beautiful, I believe, because Taurus is related to Venus, which is also a planet that is, well, a very famous one. I guess it's love, of course. It's also the gift of the soul. Wherever your Venus is in your chart, or wherever your Venus star point is, which is another technique, is going to be where you find something that is of your higher self, that is of your love consciousness, which is your soul's gift that you can contribute to this world. Because for everyone, like when you see Venus in the stars, sometimes in the sky, she's a star, right? She's a morning star or the evening star. And she's a soul sister of Earth, a bit further on the evolutionary plane. So with that, Venus is about finding your unique talent in the world, which will contribute to all these things like self-worth, value, loving yourself, and so also bring resources into the world to sustain yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because the most beautiful thing you can do is like finding your unique talent and contributing that into the world, and then it is automatically monetized, but it's based on what you spiritually have come to bring into the world through love, through Venus. So that's a bit about Taurus. And yeah, these eclipses have been happening in these signs. So today, I don't know when this is airing, so I don't know if it's particularly relevant to speak about this eclipse. You tell me.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I could get this one out. I would hope, honestly, I could do it hopefully today. Since it is an eclipse, I would love to, and I have time after it. So it just depends on the download process, but I would love to, because I think it's so important to touch on it, because it is happening right now. And
it is happening.
I always, like, what I find interesting about this is I know a lot of people, and I'm friends with a lot of people that don't necessarily research on their own about this world. You know, like, they don't really care about the moon and the eclipses, and they're just not tapped into it, and that's totally fine. But it's funny when I hear them going through something or experiencing something, and I explain what I know about it, and they're like, that makes so much sense. And I think it would be a really good way to put this out there now, so people can make that bridge themselves a little bit, like for my listeners that don't fully, understand this world.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and like it's a world of archetypes in a way. So it's a language, and what is beautiful about it is that we can collectively connect, because the planets are always somewhere in the sky, as they are today. And so today we have this lunar eclipse, and the lunar eclipse is about a fruition, is about a harvest and a letting go, because it's basically a full moon that's jacked up or on steroids. And we say that eclipses have a bearing over the next 6 months. Now, we have already been in this eclipse season for 1.5 years, and having this eclipse positioned right there. So we have the moon, across from it is the sun, illuminating it completely. But the sun is in union in this moment with Uranus, which is the great awakener. So that great awakener is also standing in front of the moon. The moon is very much our comfort zone. It's our mother. It is who we are at night when no one is watching. It is this home feeling. It's our portal into incarnation. It's what makes us comfortable. It's actually our deepest identity, I would say. And to have Uranus, the big awakener, standing in front of that, that's about liberation. So if we look at a full moon as something that is fully illuminated, something of the past that is now finally seen to either harvest from or release completely, which is the same thing, because when you look at it, a harvest is when the earth releases something, but we harvest something. So it is the same dynamic. And with Uranus being a liberator and an awakener standing in front of that home, the moon, it makes me feel like that there is really a great opportunity to let go of these things of the past that are related to the constellation of Scorpio. So that means where we have our attachments, our dependencies, emotional enmeshment, anything that we put into our body that is toxic, which is of course related to the food and very material things, but also emotionally, like the people, the energies we surround ourselves with, and then mentally, the thoughts that we feed ourselves with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's sorry to interrupt. That's something that I've been feeling for myself, is the past like 2 months have just been a wave of like just emotion and a little bit of moodiness, if I'm being honest. And there's this like kind of like a spiral, and it feels so intense. But it's interesting to know from your side that it is a release, because that's what I've been feeling. Like, it's not that I feel stuck in the spiral. It feels like it's building up to drop almost. And that's what I've been feeling for like 2 months, like this really big energy within me. And then I know it's gonna like it's going to feel like a giant breath out, which is very exciting and comforting. But while you're in the spiral, a little bit of high emotions and the attachments and learning where I am dependent and how I show up in the world, it's a lot when you're in it, but it's exciting to know that, you know, I can let it go. I can, and the universe is encouraging me to let it go. And what I really like about your description about all of it is you do describe it in a very beautiful way. Something that I've seen, at least like through my research and all of this, is sometimes it's put out fearfully almost, or maybe that's just how I interpret it. But people hear full moon or eclipse and they're like, what does that mean? And it's the immediate like, oh no, what's going to happen? Versus how you're describing it as like a beautiful transition, because everything is a season at the end of the day. Everything that happens within us is a cycle. Everything that happens outside of us is a cycle. And if we embrace the cycle versus the fear of release, then we're not appreciating the harvest either. So I just really appreciate the way that you choose to explain it in a way that it feels safe and it feels comforting and it feels very flowy, versus like sometimes I'm not sure if it's like maybe clickbait almost for people to watch the content, and I'm not judging them for that, but maybe that's just a tactic. But it does instill, even sometimes with me, a little bit of fear. I'm like, oh shit, it's happening, and it gets scary. And then I listen to someone like you and I get reminded, okay, like this is all a part of the process, like it's okay. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for bringing that up. And I think that's really important what you say about the fear, because the responsibility of the person who's translating the language, it's important to what words you use. I don't know if you do any client work, if you sit with people like one-on-one, like they invest power, like you have a power of knowledge at that moment. And the way you use that is really important. And I think that our thoughts create our reality. That's the alchemical knowledge. That's the gold of Scorpio as well, to know that. So the way we're going to word things is going to impress upon the consciousness of that human being that sits in front of us. And it's always my ambition or my intention to word it in a way that we can embrace the truth of it, but in the best possible scenario.
Yeah.
Because our language is so important. It is instant creation. And fear, of course, Scorpio, it is related to fear, but I don't know, what do you think about that? I read in this book recently, I think it's Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art, that we have to go towards our fear, because that's where our biggest growth lies. It's what we resist the most, because fear, you know, like, and somatically it feels like excitement. So that's also a different translation, you know, like you can say like, okay, you're really excited about this now. This excitement will hold in part the sensation of fear, but it's just a different translation of it. And sometimes that can really shift your mind if you name it differently.
No, I completely agree with that. I did a meditation maybe a week or two ago, and it was about like walking with your fear. Like you do go into it, but it's not like face your fear, like this head-to-head battle. It was more of like, greet your fear, notice it, be with it, sit with it, walk with it, hold its hand, and then see how you feel when you're comfortable with it. Because I think there's a difference between, you know, facing your fear in a way where you're confronting it, because confrontation sounds very kind of like vulgar, feels very like harsh often, like I'm fighting against my fear. When you see it as like, meet your fear, like sit with it, you're kind of curious, and then you're like, oh, this isn't that bad. This fear is just like a thing. It can come with me. We can hang out. It feels a lot more light and comforting. It doesn't feel as scary, because fears in general, like that's what they are. Fear creates fear. Like they're scary. And it's how can we notice them and be with them in a way where we allow them to be in our lives, but in a safe space. Almost. That makes sense.
Yes. And personally as well, I've been thinking about this idea of like, what is fear and what is my intuition saying no in the body? Because if you tap into your body and you go to become acquainted with it, like to befriend it,
Yeah.
then there is also this mechanism that I noticed that, oh, I actually get to know my intuitive mind better. And to bring it back to this eclipse, it's so interesting to have Uranus standing there across the sky from the moon, because Uranus is very much our higher mind. It is not something that is easily integrated in the body or that is easy on the body. If personally, for example, you would have a moon or a sun or a personal planet in the constellation of Taurus since 2018, and Uranus is in that sign, Uranus is awakening within the realm of what that planet means, but it's doing so through flashes of inspiration. It's thunder and lightning. It's a telephone line to God. So it's these messages that come instantly, that are like, it's instant cognition, precognition almost. It's not been processed through the logical mind. And we're building that bridge, I feel, nowadays between our logical mind, so the science mind, and this intuitive mind, and seeing how they can work together. And I do feel that with Uranus being there and the moon being in a constellation that is related to fear, and the moon being our body, or at least our first body, because we all grew through the bodies of our mother, that we can get to know ourselves more on a physical level as well through this eclipse, and like locate the fear and have these thoughts like, hey, is my intuition saying stop and no to this, or am I just in some kind of survival mechanism and survival reaction?
Yeah, that's everything you're saying today is just making sense for me on a personal level. What I've been like, along with the high emotions I've been feeling, it first for me feels physical. Like it feels like a physical reaction, and I feel the tightness, and I feel the like the rage almost. When something very minor will trigger me, it first sits in my body. So that's something that is, I guess, more new for me for over the past 2 months. So it makes sense with everything you're saying. And again, when you do sit with your fears and you allow, like, you kind of give them the space, I feel myself finding the difference between my intuition and my fear, because then I'm able to say, where is this fear coming from? And if I have an answer, then it's typically not my intuition, because I have a reason. Because then I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, duh, you're not fearful of this situation happening now. You're experiencing physically what happened to you 10 years ago, and now you're feeling the feelings inside, and you're projecting it onto this situation. And that's why I can tell the difference between if I don't have like I feel like it's like a little roadmap for me when I close my eyes and I'm like, okay, what is this feeling rooted in? And if I can't kind of make my way there naturally, then it's probably my intuition talking to me. But that's just how it goes for me. I just think it's really interesting that you're laying out everything that I've kind of been experiencing the past 2 months.
That's wonderful. And I think that's a really good way to put it. I really appreciate that, this idea of bringing the past into your present. If you can explain it to yourself too well, it's almost like you're killing it. Like, okay, clearly that's something that comes from a fear of reproducing the past. Because I feel also what comes with this awareness of, we're so aware of our wounds, and we're born in an era of healing. Right? We have all these tools to get to know ourselves on a deep psychological level. And Scorpio is also the psychologist. So that's maybe interesting to go into a bit deeper, because I don't know how you feel about that, but if we get to know ourselves so well, we can get kind of stuck in the identity of the healing journey. And what we want to reach the other end. I know that it's not linear, and that it's a spiral, and things will come up our entire lives. Otherwise, we would be dead. So there's things to do, there's work to do. But that deep work where you go into your cave and you just like look at it and you confront like your past. I work with esoteric astrology. So first thing that I bring up usually is you choose your parents. You choose them on an energetic level because they provide the conditions that will help you build a learning container for the first 28, 29 years of our lives until the Saturn return. So this being said, like, if we get into this healing journey, I think it's important to also state that there is another side. We can turn back to the light and have a laugh again, because for a while I feel everything gets super serious because the subconscious doesn't have a sense of humor. And maybe for myself, I noticed that I had this defense mechanism that was humor all through my 20s, like, and actually all my life. And I feel like, actually, this is not so funny. So I walked back on that a bit, but knowing that there is still fun on the other side, that it doesn't have to be always like this deep work. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. That's something else that I've been incorporating in my life, is finding the balance between what do I need to dive so deep on and like uncover and heal, and what can I just like be with. I was listening to something, maybe it was like an Instagram video, and it said how it was in regard to relationships, and I think it said something along the lines of like, how much are you working on your relationship versus being in your relationship?
Yes.
I was like, that relates to even my relationship with self. Like, how much am I doing, trying to fix, trying to heal, trying to be the best of the best and be perfect? And like, am I actually in a relationship with myself, or am I just covering it with, well, I'm healing? Because that just brings you, like, you're almost covering it up a little bit, those layers. And that's how I found myself with my relationship for a bit, because it was like, oh, I'm in this relationship to heal and to get triggered and to find my path. And I'm like, am I in this relationship, or am I just, is this like a tool?
In the analysis of it.
And exactly.
That really hits home. And I also feel it relates to the North Node in Taurus, because if Scorpio is the dark, Taurus is the light, it's the enlightenment. It's the Buddha sitting under the tree and realizing that everything just is. And I think with Jupiter going into Taurus, we're going to have just beautifully aligned with this eclipse cycle ending. And then Jupiter comes to bring the blessings of it almost by entering into Taurus. We're going to be more into being, like what really matters. And I so resonate with that, like being in a relationship with oneself, more honeymooning with oneself, and less the analysis about it. Yeah, because also Scorpio, we can get so deep into the feelings and the mental processing that goes with it. Is that okay? But when am I actually living? And I think that's a really beautiful message. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing it up. I wanted to touch on, you talked about how we choose our parents. And I personally think that as well. I think we have our soul tribe that we kind of chose beforehand, and we're with them through many lives that we have. And I think a lot of people would hear that and say, well, I wouldn't have chose these people, or I wouldn't have chose this situation. So what would you say about that? I know what I would say, and I would say that it's not about choosing who's perfect for you. It's about choosing the person who is going to help you heal and go through the lessons that you're meant to in this lifetime. That's what I think anyway. Like, obviously I wouldn't have chosen certain things to happen, but I chose in my, when I was up there making my little soul contract, I think that I was like, okay.
Oh, you're typing.
Yeah, I'm making
typing it out.
Yeah. I think that I did choose, okay, I need to work on this lesson. I need this lesson. I need this lesson. How am I going to get that? Throw all these people into a bunch, have them sorted out, and I'm going to be there. That's kind of how I see it. But I would like to know how you kind of, think, like, what you think about that.
Well, I see it in a very similar way. If you look at it, you have your father and your mother. There is one that you have been all too often, and one that you shouldn't be anymore. So basically, both of them are a sort of anti-answer. And in that also, that is their sacrifice and their offering to you. Sacrifice as in making sacred. Because to be the anti-example, and it sounds maybe a bit harsh, but obviously there's pearls in it as well, you know, but I believe that this is a time where we're sorting out a lot of karma that is interpersonal still, and that it is possible in the future to bring children in the world from a place of uh, a lot less karma. But
Yeah.
we come still in sort of to assist our parents in working through this this karma, and they are a symbol of psychological tendencies that we are overcoming. And I think that's really wonderful if we start to see it in that way, because it is something that we are, by seeing that, having the opportunity to outgrow. And I mean, what is more beautiful than that? And I think before the first Saturn return, like 20, 28, 29, 30 years old, most of life, because we're still in a karmic era, is a repetition of in rapid, like in accelerated, of past life stuff that we have to review and do over again and learn more quickly. So there is an evolution. And I think like our families indeed provide that container to get us there. And then it's our task, because of the unraveling, and the psychological unraveling is so interesting, to then not stay stuck in that identity either, you know? And I think that's it as well. Like, imagine you go to a psychotherapist for the first time, or you go to see an astrologer or any healer, and they tell you all these things that make you understand why certain things don't work out in your lives. And you start attaching that to that story of your parents. And if you go on and on about it, well, in a way, yes, you need to carry the story until you're tired of it. But then I hope we do get tired of it, you know, and that it gets almost boring at a certain point, so you can just go live you. And the teacher that I studied with, she said something really beautiful to me the other day. It was last year, but I still carry it with me, is that to overcome your karma, like to overcome your karma is not to do the exact same thing as your parents, but also not to do the exact opposite, because then you're still perpetuating the cycle. It's to find your own way. It's to get rid of the baggage, to clearly see what it is, and to discover what is mine in this.
I love that. I love that so much, because I personally think that when you go in any extreme, like, oh, I see my parent did that, so I'm going to go the complete opposite way, is still acting out of a place of reaction. You're still reacting to what they did. You're still acting out of your emotions versus your authenticity, versus what's actually you. And I'm someone that I used to definitely do that a lot. If I saw certain behavior, oh, I'm going to do complete opposite, but I'm still acting based off of you. I'm not aligned with me. Like, what is actually true for me outside of you, you know? And that's where I think detachment comes in. Of, at the end of the day, it's my path and my journey and my experience. You're just like, everyone is just a part of it. We are all connected, but it is my turn to choose how I go about it.
Yes, and it's a choice that's your power, right? Like, also in these, because you touched upon this a bit, like the idea of like soul clusters. So we travel with a soul cluster, and then we come into incarnation, and we meet each other, and there's this invisible conspiracy that brings people together at a given point in time, either when we're ready to grow with that person, or when we're ready to receive their message. Which can feel like a poison, or it can feel like the most delicious drink you've ever had. But everyone is your angel in a way, whether it's in the dark, because that's just your own shadow that is represented by this person, and through the entity created by your meeting, not even this person particularly always. So I think it's always interesting to see as well. I think there's a danger in labeling, but this idea that, okay, we have the soul cluster we travel with. So these people are all our soulmates.
Yeah.
And some of them we have some unfinished business with, like a karmic soulmate. That's something that is in New Age often called twin flame.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
Twin flame, or you have a spiritual soulmate. That's like somebody with whom you never really created a mess. Or actually, if you created a mess at some point, you have sorted it out over lifetimes, and now you just come as a touch of light. And that's those friends. You cannot see them for 2 years, and then they sit down, you have a coffee with them, and it's exactly as it always was.
Yeah.
And it's just love. And then you also have like people you meet, souls that you meet, that where there is just some karma. And they represent that for you, and you don't have a particular link with them. It's not that you have met them over and over, but they give you intense feelings.
Yeah.
Because there's something to work out in yourself.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's beautiful when you look at things from a perspective of the soul. And in the astrology that I do as well, like I make these connections between people. Like, what were the expressions of past lives that people had together on this plane? My teacher taught me a technique for that, and that's always been so revealing, because for myself, I can feel it when see. That's also why I believe in the language, or why I believe it can be a healing tool to forgive across timelines. Because when you receive that message, okay, imagine like you've met someone and it's been really hard. You've been going through a really hard time, and you cannot like understand it, because we always want to understand,
Yeah.
instead of just living your life, as you said earlier. But then you notice that, oh, actually, we were together in some past life, and there was end of karma through death, for example. One died of the other, and you were left behind, or there is like abandonment pattern in it. It's like, okay, so I understand why you treat me in this way. And then obviously, if the other person is not on the same journey that you are, it's not about telling them that or convincing that. It's more like, within myself, what do I have to sort out to balance that out and eclipse out of that karma in a way.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think there's something you said about that is handling it kind of yourself. You don't always have to tell the other people, or kind of like work with them. There's oftentimes a pull of, well, I want them to understand, and I want them to be a part of it, because it's both of us. But our relationship to anyone is also our relationship with ourselves and how we view it. It's not always, how can we do something? Sometimes it only requires yourself. And I'm someone who when I feel misunderstood, I'm like, how can I make you understand? But I've been learning to let that go and say, I don't need you to understand, because I understand, and I can work through it with myself. And then you can come along, but it doesn't have to be that like us and we moving forward. But I wanted to ask you about twin flame, because again, that is like such a hot word right now. Like everyone's twin flame. So what actually to you is a twin flame, and how do you think it's misused in our society, or right now?
Let's start with the misuse. I think if we glue a label to anything, we start to identify with it. And imagine like what a word, twin flame. So I am not one whole. There is some kind of twin that is missing.
Yes. Yeah.
For myself, I feel like I'm a twin flame. I have Chiron in Gemini. So Gemini is a constellation of the twins. And this is an important constellation at this moment, because it's where language happens. And it's also where, on a soul level, we learn correct human relationships. So it's a Gemini thing to begin with. And the twin flame, I think the archetypal relationship would be Jesus and Mary Magdalene. It is these two people that are together with a mission on earth. And even Mary Magdalene, the sacrifice that she made, going down in the history books as a prostitute for thousands of years, like they make that sacrifice because of the message of the Christ consciousness. So that was a great service to the world, but it comes with huge sacrifices. Also, what religion has created after is also a sacrifice, I consider. So it's kind of making something really big and wanting to, like, we all want to feel special. right? So twin flame does that kind of like, oh, like twin flame. So that must be really special. And I'm not saying that there are really special connections in between people, but what I've often seen that is that if we give so much of our power away to another person, to another relationship, often it is because there is unsettled karma with this person. You have loved each other deeply, but there's been stuff that is unresolved, and you're reproducing these patterns, and you have these very intense emotions, which eventually are going to bring you to the heart and to heart consciousness, which is not of the emotions. The emotions, so it's so deeply felt that we have to give meaning, and the search for meaning is super important. I think the danger lies in labeling it as a sort of twin flame, because that makes this your unique person without whom you cannot be complete. That's a bit of a destructive, self-destructive way of thinking.
Yes. Yeah.
That I would not like to encourage. No.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. I think it's
sorry.
No. You go.
But my question: do you feel like what I often think about with that is I do feel that there are souls that have gone through many processes and that can integrate multiple timelines, because we have our earthly expression here of our soul, but we don't know if there's not there's other expressions already on the energetic realm. You're all the things that you have ever been, and all lives are lived simultaneously. But then maybe there is an expression of like your soul is expressing on another realm, on another planet even. We don't know. So why would there not be multiple expressions of one soul at this point of time where things are so complex, so we can integrate faster? And I do feel like when there's a lot of like Gemini and Chiron in Gemini, you can have that feeling that that there was somebody as you anchored into the womb, that there was some other soul that helped you anchor into the womb, or that there is some other version of you that is walking this planet. And there can be this longing that you grew up with in your childhood for this perfect best friend. That comes with that. And I resonate with that. When I was younger, I always wondered, where's my twin sister? But it's this, like, we don't know what is real, because we're just translating an archetypal language and a feeling, which is eventually the truth, but which cannot be described. It's a secret.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I liked what you said about kind of like the label, like we want to feel special. And when we want to feel special, we want to be seen by someone else. And I think that comes from a place of not always feeling special within, because we're always searching for the outside, the external. How can we feel valued? And I think it also provides a safety blanket. Like if you get into a relationship and you hear them say something like twin flame, soulmate, something like that, it gives you that like, oh, okay. So they do think that I'm special. So they do think I'm different. And that can be very misleading, I think, and can go down kind of like a slippery slope, because then you get attached to that term. You're like, I don't know. I think it can provide some maybe like false expectations, because you're putting so many expectations, because what do you think of the word versus what do they think of the word? Something like a twin flame or soulmate. I don't know. Just a weird.
Again, this mind heart thing, right? And the language that we drape over it. And soulmate, it's a specific word. Like on a level of soul, there is no gender, right? Of course, we come to do our gender here on this plane, but on a level of soul, there's not even gender. So soulmate, it also, whatever your sexual orientation is, it's gonna relate to the gender, but soulmates, like it's soul friends, actually. I like the word soul sibling, actually, because these are our brothers and sisters. And in the highest expression is that we come to embrace the human family as our family, and that we are all brothers and sisters. So no one is special, but we're all special.
Yeah, there's not the one particular special called out person, but at the end of the day, we're all special. Yeah, I do like that.
And friendship being the highest, like the quality of love. True
Yeah.
love being through friendship. Because friendship in general, we're more unconditional. I'm not saying that there's no karmic friendships but in general, like we're more acceptant when a friend just does their own thing and doesn't call you for 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I agree. There's definitely different kind of love out there. There's the like romantic love is different than like a friendship love to me, but sometimes I wonder, is there a way, like is it too dependent to think that romantic love is different in that sort of way, like the not calling for 3 days? Does that come from a place of attachment
An
or
expectation, as you said.
an expectation, or is that just like what I truly want? Like I want to speak every day, or is that like on a
I think
soul
it's
level
both.
too attached? Yeah.
I think it's both. I think we're somehow, most of us are wired for relationship and for connection. Actually, I was recently in India, and I sat through the class again where they do in yoga, they do the yamas and the niyamas, with like the 10 commandments that you have. And like in the social discipline, there is, so the five first ones, the yamas, are the social discipline. And there is one that is about abstinence, that is about things that we can, cravings that we can have, and there's cravings of the tongue, which is speech and food. And then there is cravings of power, and sex is one of those. And the solution for all of this, this teacher said, is just marriage. We've done it since the beginning of day. And he gave that example of the marriage of Shiva, and saying as well that, how he put it was like, love is ordinary. If you see someone often enough and you're nice to them, they're gonna love you. So we place in the West a lot of emphasis on romantic love. I myself, I think I'm also very guilty of it. It might be my main vice. And there's more of an acceptance of the responsibilities of a marriage. Well, I cannot generalize for all of India because there's thousands of Indias. It's a super big country. And I was in an ashram, which is like a place where they're spiritually attuned. But in general, it's like seen in a different way, this connection. And to come back to the different kinds of love, I was talking about it yesterday with a friend. Sometimes I feel like I have these intense friendships, and I see this all around, like people who really like connect, and they have this intense friendship with someone that is doing all the things together. They're doing so many things together that is only the sexual part is not there.
Yeah.
But this is a very deep connection that is also somebody with whom you shared all of that soul past, but because the romance is not on the table because you're straight or you're gay or whatever it is, it kind of makes it so much easier. So that is something that I really think about, like on a soul level, like what does that mean? And we still have to do this material world. We still got to do this life. So relationship is a big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. When you were speaking, it made me kind of realize why maybe a friendship is a bit easier than romantic love. And that's because the sexual part and the romance isn't there. And I think that's a huge part of a relationship. And that's a level that you don't get to in a friendship. Like you're not, like that's such a vulnerable and open, and I think connecting space. And when you're vulnerable and connecting, you're building a completely different bond, which creates a completely different attachment to someone, which then comes the expectations and all of that. But I think that's why it might be easier, because sexual intimacy is so important, I think, and so powerful, maybe a little bit more than we let on in the world because we want to brush it off. And maybe now, especially with society and the way things go, it's a little more normalized to be less, like a little more carefree about that kind of stuff, which, I mean, I'm not judging. I mean, everyone do your own thing. I don't care either way, but I do think when you are sexually intimate with someone, it opens a whole other like world, honestly. Intimacy. That's just kind of like something I thought about when you were talking about it.
That's amazing. You just gave all the keywords to the constellation of Scorpio.
Really?
It's like intimacy, sexuality, powerful, you said,
Yeah.
and it's interesting because Scorpio comes after Libra. So when you look at the constellations in chronological order, the hero's journey of it, in Libra, you would have the one-on-one relationship and perhaps the wedding. But Scorpio, you have the marriage, where you actually see all the things on such a deep level, and
Yeah.
having sexual intimacy with someone over years, developing that's a way of seeing the other that indeed that friendship perhaps does not come to, because it's not physical. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was beautiful. All of these things are so interesting because I don't know, like, definitely as much as you do about the constellations and astrology and stuff, but it's just interesting. There's all these cool little overlaps that of like what I'm saying and what which I think is just super cool. But since time is kind of running out, I always ask people at the end of my shows, if you could tell the entire world something, anything, they're all listening, they're all paying attention to the entire world, what would you say? What would your message be?
It would probably change a lot over time, but today it would be have courage. Have courage to live your life.
I love that.
And a bit related to what you said earlier, because I think that stuck with me the most from our conversation. Like, how much of my life am I in this? Because I mentioned the people who listen to this podcast, they are on some sort of healing journey or are already connected to these things. So how much of my life am I living? How much of it am I analyzing? And with that, like having the courage to live and to experience and to go straight towards the light as well.
Yeah.
Because all we got to do to live is to move straight towards the light.
Yeah.
And tell people of our love. So that would be it for today.
I love it. You have such a beautiful presence about you. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want to like talk about or share?
Just for the people that are listening now, if things are a bit heavy on the body or you're not sleeping so well in this moment, know that this too shall pass. The moon will move forward, and we will not have this direct opposition anymore with Uranus, because sometimes that's insomnia is something that is a bit difficult to deal with. Yeah. So drink enough water and be mindful and present if you use any like electronics and things like that at the moment, because Uranus is also a planet of a lot of electricity and sudden events. So to just be mindful and drink a lot of water.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's all good to know. Electronics, good to know, because I know, well, this is literally a podcast, so people are listening on a device, but also Mercury in retrograde. I know that deals with kind of like electronics technology and stuff. And I've had my fair share of Mercury playing around with my electronics and creating the havoc. So,
and maybe to that also like the Mercury retrograde, right? Because that's such a popular concept. Again, the same thing with if immediately our mind would make an association of this shit is gonna go wrong, then my invitation would be like to heal Mercury retrograde and to just see it as a period where we have the opportunity to slow down.
Yeah.
Because especially now it's in Taurus, to slow down and really go back over our mental processes. And really look at things and just take some time to just rest, take a bath. I don't know, like to just take more time away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that I've been doing when I see like Mercury in retrograde is coming up, I used to be very fearful, and how I've been trying to use it now is like, oh, give a little more grace to people, give a little more grace to myself, be a little more compassionate. Like I had in the very beginning probably like 3 miscommunications with my boyfriend, and instead of like getting mad at each other, we were like, oh, okay, like we understand that it's probably gonna happen during this time. Like let's just they were very minor, like silly miscommunications, but it's something that may have got me a little triggered or him a little like before, but it was easier knowing that like, okay, like being prepared for it versus being scared of it, like using it with us rather than against us has been very helpful. So that's something that I would say is a helpful tip for people. Just give yourself more grace, compassion. Like, something might get a little, wonky, and that's okay. Just be prepared.
Okay.
That's
okay. So beautiful. Give yourself grace. Yes. No planet is doing anything to you.
Yeah.
It's working with you. Otherwise, like, it's such a big play out there. The sun is spinning all those planets around. There's no mistake in that.
Yeah.
It's just our ability to merge with that energy and to co-create with it, which is our savior. That's it.
Yeah.
Give yourself grace. That's so beautiful, Gabrielle. That's a beautiful. It suits you well, this sentence.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's something that I always say during my yoga classes is the universe is always working for you and with you, never against you. Just like that giant reminder of it's all working with you and for you. Even if in the moment you're like, why the fuck is this happening? You can take a second to be like, okay, at the end of the day, it's all working for me. It's not against me. You're literally a child of the universe. It wouldn't be doing something to hurt you at the end of the day. There's always a protective path that it's carving out for you. Even if you can't see it, the path is being created for you.
Yes, you are the beloved child of the universe. That's a beautiful one as well.
Yeah. Oh. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. You have such a beautiful heart. I can feel your intentions are so pure, and you're just like a light, sharing light, which is really appreciated. And I genuinely am grateful for your intentional language that you choose to use. I felt it throughout the entire conversation. It's not, it's just something that's valued, at least for me. You choose to not control, but navigate how things are shown to people. And you're very mindful of that. So I really appreciate that here.
Thank you so much.
Soul.
Thank you so much. You're beautiful, and I was so happy to talk to you today.
Thank you.
We'll do this again someday.
Yeah. Have a good day.
You too. Enjoy. Ciao.